Longtime Lands player, about a year ago switched over from Lands to Golgari Depths, still making 2020, he's just doing it in a different fashion.
Right, and the big draw to depths over the land stacks is rather than leaning into the prison elements that the land stack gives you, this Golgari depth stack is kind of just going, you know what, the land stack just wants to depths kill people anyway, what if I just be the best deck at doing that?
Which certainly Golgari Depths has been putting up some numbers. 7 pilots of it into day 2.
Yeah, and the great thing about Golgari Depths is this is a deck that kind of just started as a meme deck in Legacy. I think it won Legacy Eternal Weekend in 2016?
Yeah, I believe it was 16.
Right, and everyone the whole tournament was going, this deck is adorable. This is so cute. Can you believe this person's winning games? But then as the months went on, it grew, and it grew, and now it's a real player in the format.
Well, Smiley is going to be on the play here. Starts with a Ponder. So looking at the Azorius Delver list, yeah, 14 creatures. It's 4 of Delver of Secrets, Stoneforge Mystic, and True Name Nemesis. The one Niv Magus we talked about, and just 1 Snapcaster Mage.
So one of the things that the Azorius Delver deck has over the more traditional Grixis Delver decks in this matchup is it has ways to check the Merit Lage token. So the bad thing is that way is Swords to Plowshares, and when you're trying to be proactive, letting them gain 20 life from your answer puts you pretty far behind, but the Niv Magus Elementals in this deck do give you the ability to actually just deal 20 damage over the course of 2 or 3 turns.
All right, Mox Diamond, Sylvan Safekeeper, Wasteland to start for David Long. Mox Diamond, of course, one of the most powerful cards in this deck. And Safekeeper is going to prevent that one answer, the Swords to Plowshares you were talking about. That's Thomas's way of interacting with Merit Lage once it's on the battlefield.
Right, and I don't see any copies of Council's Judgment hanging out in Smiley's main deck like we were seeing from Jones and Fuhrer before. And just glancing at the sideboard, it doesn't look like there are any copies there either.
Yeah, there's nothing like Jace the Mind Sculptor to unsummon it either. So right now I like David's setup, and that's pretty defensive, right? So if there's a Wasteland from Thomas, he can waste the waste. And if there's a Swords from Thomas, he can use Sylvan Safekeeper. So if David can put together the 2020, it figures to be safe here.
Exactly, and that's kind of one of the draws to this Golgari Depths deck is rather than having things like Punishing Fire or your Prison-y draws that try to just grind your opponent out eventually or wasteland them out with life from the loam, you just kind of build this house of cards where you go, you know what, I only need to do one thing. And if that one thing happens, you will die on the spot.
Umezawa's Jite is the find off Stoneforge Mystic. Of course, that's going to be an answer to Sylvan Safekeeper if Thomas can find the time to get that onto the battlefield and equipped.
Well, you could just sacrifice a land. Yeah.
Yeah. And then another one, and oof.
Look, you're planning on sacrificing lands anyway. That's how you make a 2020.
All right, so it's just on theme.
Exactly.
Doesn't do anything here.
Exactly. This is all just basically helping Long out.
Thespian's Stage for David Long is going to make Dark Confidant. Now Long 4 Dark Confidants in the main. It's become a thing for Golgari Depths. Actually, out of sideboard, he boards even more kind of go long style cards.
Right, and the idea here is we've seen these Long move away from the cards sort of like Pithing Needle that answer cards like Wasteland and just try to grind the cards out and go, you know what? Wasteland's going to happen, and rather than being a slightly more consistent turn 3-ish deck, it's moving on to being a turn 4, turn 5 deck, but it's more consistent at killing people on the 5th turn than it was at killing people on the 3rd turn.
He's even got a Hymn to Turok in the main today. That's
sending
I know, right?
A message.
Yeah, out of the board, he has 3 more, so he boards into a full 4 hymns. Yeah.
Look, sometimes you just want to play the rock in Legacy, and then your Tarmogoyf is a 20-power flyer.
Smiley cracked a fetchland main phase, so he just had that mana ready, looks like. But he just passed. We're back to David Long. So Stoneforge Mystic looking to put that GT into play. Here is Dark Depths from Long, so that's both halves of the combo, Thespian's Stage and Dark Depths. Now, is there anything stopping Long from just going for a 2020 here? It looks like all the pieces are in play.
Right. Most of what you want to see from Long's side is going on here, or is at least firing on us all cylinders. But what I do like from Smiley's side is really prioritizing this Umezawa's Jete to try and set up a situation where you can feasibly answer the Merit Lage token.
So how does that work?
So basically, if Smiley has a copy of Swords to Plowshares and can equip Umezawa's Jete to Stoneforge Mystic, he's going to end up giving up this Stoneforge Mystic for the sake of just putting counters on Umezawa's Jite, but then you get to pick off the Sylvan Safekeeper and also get a window to just Swords to Plowshares the Dark Depths token here without David Long having the protection he needs to save it.
Long going to make the 20-20. His Wasteland is down.
Gerald Thompson has entered the fray.
Thomas draws. We saw in the Gajewski Long match, Gajewski with Maverick put together Umezawa's Jite. Gave him a second turn. He actually used the life gain mode on those counters to go above 20 for a turn.
Look, you have two options. You can gain 4 life, or you can give the Merit Lage -2/-2 and gain 2 life. It's just good math.
Yeah. If you get 20 Jite counters, you can answer the Merit Lage. That's another strategy.
All right, so all you need is 401 life.
Yeah.
That's not that much. Jitty helps you gain life.
401.
That's how you can
No,
get
you
there.
only need 201. You get counters 2 at a time. We only need 10 hits. We can do it with half as much life.
We have the technology.
Brainstorm from Smiley. You mentioned the kind of cards he's looking for. Swords to Plowshares has got to be top of his list, even with that Safekeeper in play.
Exactly, and it's just the only way that he stays in this game, right? You can't stare at this 20/20 indestructible flying creature and plan to have any kind of traction that you can
Now,
gain.
what about this? Smiley found Wasteland. Well, I was going to say he can Wasteland Long's Wasteland.
That is a more mana-efficient way to do things, and it
Right.
also puts Long a little bit further out of the game for a single turn. But with this Dark Confidant on the battlefield, if Smiley doesn't have a way to answer that soon, then things are just going to spiral out of control.
GT equipped Smiley cleverly leaves up that white mana. Here comes in Stoneforge Mystic. Now, there's a pretty easy block for Long with Merit Lage, but no matter what happens, that GT is getting counters.
Right, there's not really any other option here. You kind of just have to block the Stoneforge Mystic.
Yeah.
No matter what, your creatures are dying. You just kind of have to take your medicine and choose how it happens.
I was kind of looking at, I guess there's a way, if Long had a mana, he could crop rotate for Sajiri Step to try to deny GT counters. That's not going to work. So the block is made, 2 counters onto the GT. And
letting Long untap here may
Yeah.
have been a bit of a misstep. Unless Smiley doesn't have the Swords to Plowshares and is hoping that Long only attacks with the Merit Lage, then he can theoretically
Okay.
go to 21 here.
yeah, if Smiley had the swords, it felt like that's where we would have seen it.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, and I'm looking at his hand. The only white card appears to be Stoneforge Mystic.
That is not a Swords to Plowshares.
Yeah, I respect that he's bluffing here, but the problem is that it's free for Long to call this bluff, right? All they have to do is turn each creature, just swing everything.
Right, but you will end up seeing this as people get deeper into tournaments where you go, there's a ton of money on the line in these events. So you just got to play to your outs sometimes. And, it's not like this match is going to take a very long time either way. So if you don't think time is going to be an issue, just make him do it.
It's the free swing, and indeed, Thomas Smiley does not have the Swords to Plowshares. So game 1 goes over to David Long. Golgari Depths notches that first win.
On the bright side, things do get a bit better for Smiley out of the sideboard here.
Yeah, I mean, he's going to look for other ways. So, right, he wants to interact with the combos. That means either blowing up the land, answering the 20/20. Let's look at some of the cards he has. So, 2 Disenchant, 2 Back to Basics. A one of Palace Jailer, Containment Priest, Rest in Peace, Supreme Verdict, Grafdigger's Cage, Flusterstorm, Caracas, Cataclysm, Pithing Needle, and Path to Exile. There are a ton of answers in here for this.
Right, and some of them are going to be better than others. There's some that are a little tougher to say if Smiley's going to want them. These are the things like Cataclysm, where depending on the game he's trying to play, this is something that's good at blowing up several lands.
Okay, that can blow up lands, yeah.
But if Long already has the Merit Lage, he's just going to keep the Merit Lage every time. Past that, though, the more, we'll say, reliable answers. These are your Caracas. Path to Exile, for example, is a version of Swords to Plowshares that is way better for Smiley than Swords to Plowshares is, since this isn't going to effectively double David Long's starting life total.
Right. Now, other answer, yeah, his clean answers are things like Caracas. I guess Palace Jailer, it's expensive, but still good enough to answer some Merit
It
Lage?
is technically an answer, so we're probably going to see it come in here.
And so you just want to board in all the answers. Just,
right.
Yeah.
I mean, the thing is if you don't answer the Merit Lage immediately, the game ends.
Yeah.
That's it. So you have to cover these bases the best you can.
Does Back to Basics play here?
It's close, but it's something you probably end up leaning in towards just because with David Long, even though some games can feel like a fairer game, Long tends to be a fairly linear deck in the way that his deck functions. And being land-based, you do just kind of want to try to check those things if you can. If David Long can't capitalize on how good his lands are, his deck is just kind of fundamentally going to fail.
So coming up at Star City Games, the War of the Spark pre-release. We do have an exclusive pre-release playmat that you can get at your local store. You see this one here. Of course, it's going to feature some of your favorite animals hanging out. So we have, this is, your store can sign up today to get this in time for the next set. And sign up is at go.starcitygames.com. So put the go there this time, /pre-release.
I'm so proud of you.
You can leave the go off. It'll probably still get you there.
There are 3 things on that playmat I really like.
So
they are
cats.
There's one thing that I like less, and it is the dog.
Oh, man, you are...
Twitter's
blowing up right now.
This is
just everyone.
What do you say we start? Well, not. I don't think this is the name for the playmat, so let's be very clear that this is just a joke. But this can be the War of the Bark.
I like it. I like it. All right, so David Long here, 9-2 right now with Golgari Depths. We mentioned him as a legacy specialist. From the DC area, last year on the tour, he played 9 opens and top 8'd 3 of them. A pretty darn good conversion rate. We saw him a lot of times on our team constructed opens being called in to play the legacy seat, and for good reason. That's where he found the top 8s.
Right, he's one of those players like Kevin King where it almost feels like there's a seat reserved. Obviously there's not. I want to be very clear about that. But it's definitely the type of situation where, you know, here on the SCG Tour, the legacy player is the A seat. So when you hear them announcing top 8, you go, all right, so one of them is going to start with King, one of them is going to start with Long. Who are the other 6 teams?
Yeah, both he and his brother, big legacy players. Interestingly enough, doesn't have an open win yet, despite 10 top 8s. So maybe this is the weekend.
I hope so. He's always been so consistent, and I brought it up before. We have our 2-day SCG Open leaderboard that Nick Miller frequently puts together, and it's who's played or has at least 6 or 7 open 2-day open top 8s.
Right.
And it has the conversion rate. And David Long's is something to the effect of 35%. Imagine entering these tournaments and top 8ing a third of them.
It's a pretty good weekend.
Yeah.
I wouldn't mind heading to some tournaments with that kind of batting average. Both players keeping here for the second game. Did you mention some of that going big out of the sideboard from David Long? 4 copies of him to Turok after board. Also has cards like Liliana the Last Hope to go with it.
You said going big. I think that is not the way to describe what's going on when you're boarding lower on your Dark Depths plan.
Okay.
You're going a little bit more mid-rangey here, and that's likely what Long is looking to do in matchups like this one, where Smiley is bringing in a bunch of cards in order to check Merit Lage, and Long is able to lean out of that and just go into Planeswalkers, him to Torok, maybe Green Sun Zenith to diversify the cards in his deck a little bit, have a bit more agency over how his game looks.
He really is leaning into that Dark Confidant kind of game plan, which we now see in the deck.
Exactly. You don't need to kill Smiley quickly from Long's perspective. All Long saw that game was Stoneforge Mystic, none of the Delvers or anything.
Right.
So Long is probably gearing up for a bit of a longer game, and it's hard to say if Smiley knows that that's what Long is going to do.
So Smiley's been starting on basic lands on a Stoneforge Mystic. Is it possible that David thinks he's against Miracles instead of Azorius Delver?
It's entirely possible. With Harlan's recent finishes in the Classic in Baltimore a few weeks ago, just taking home the plaque, I would imagine at this point it could go either way. It's at least on his radar, whereas a few years ago he would have been far more likely to put him on Miracles, with Brian Braun doing, for example, the kind of championing the Stoneforge Mystic version of the deck.
Does it change how David plays the game? Or does it, does he care?
That one's a little bit tougher. It depends on if he really wants to go grindy or not. If you're expecting a ton of answers from the deck, your 2-for-1s like him to Torok are going to be better, just because Smiley's trying to force you to play a more heads-up game of Magic, and him to Torok is one of the best cards when that is the dynamic of your game. Yeah,
I guess against Miracles, all 4 hymns are certainly in the deck. Against Delver, unsure.
Exactly. One of the more aggressively slanted versions, like Grixis, it's a little bit less clear, but the slower ones that are playing things like Jace the Mind Sculptor, I'm pretty interested in having him to Torok in my deck.
So 2 basic lands for Smiley from Long. It is going to be Urborg and Thespian Stage. Then casts Thoughtseize, and he actually put the land out first here, maybe respecting something like Daze. It's going to be Flusterstorm, however. No getting around that. And I wonder if we might see something like Back to Basics from Smiley. We mentioned he had them. It would be a good window for it.
That would be brutal here, and that would be why we saw Long tapping the Urborg rather than the Thespian Stage.
And now Mox Diamond from David. He does have some play around that kind of card.
Looks like he has another Thoughtseize hanging out in his hand here as well.
Okay. Cast that one. Thanks to Urborg. He'll use Thespian's Stage to cast it. And no second blue mana, so even though there's a counter spell, we get our look. Spell Snare, Spell Pierce, Wasteland, and Path to Exile. A lot of all reactive cards.
Bunch of conditional spells.
And this is the kind of hand when you keep out of a control style or blue-white deck, that when your opponent has double Thoughtseize, it's pretty dicey.
Right, you feel priced into keeping it because you do get to actually react to those Thoughtseizes. If Long hadn't had 2 of them, then it wouldn't have worked, right? But situations like this where the second Thoughtseize comes up, Long actually just knows the coast is clear to go for the combo here. So it would be awful if he were to just play Dark Depths and pass and say good luck.
I don't know if you've caught, we have a venerated Luxodon in the event hall right now.
What?
We definitely have a, yeah.
My God.
That's 1/1 counters for everyone.
Did you convoke it? I didn't know I had to convoke him. I thought.
Oh, you weren't there for the convoking?
No, I wanted those counters.
I'm really sorry. I'm sorry.
Why didn't you call me?
The Luxodon's already here.
Are you kidding?
Maybe if we draw another one, I will let you know.
We're coverage partners. Good. Look, I'm just going to cover the game by myself if this is how it's going to be.
Swords to Plowshares was gone off that duress. So Thoughtseize hits a path, duress hits a Swords to Plowshares. Long has, both players are set up with Wasteland. Long has Thespian's Stage.
So the difference in Long's tapping changed between the last 2 turns, and I think that's worth pointing out. Previously, Long accepted that he was cold for a turn to Back to Basics because he had tapped his Urborg, so he tapped Thespian Stage to Thoughtseize and then left up the Mox Diamond to represent green mana as well. But this turn, it's fairly free for him to just completely play around that Back to Basics, so he's tapping the Mox Diamond instead. This also gives him the line to copy a plains or an island to let this Thespian Stage not get locked under a Back to Basics.
Interesting, because those aren't the colors of his spells, but untapping is a nice thing, so we'll take it.
Right. It's a weird spot where, oh no.
Okay, Wasteland on Thespian Stage. Now, if David has a crop rotation, right?
He just gets to copy plains now.
Oh no.
I was going to say...
This is a misstep from Smiley, right? Yeah, if Long just copies a basic plains, the Wasteland ability fizzles.
That's true. It may just be Smiley trying to find a window to get Long to tap out.
If he had Back to Basics, that would make sense, but his follow-up Stoneforge, I think that was just a misstep. As he gets Batterskull with Stoneforge Mystic.
Right. It's really hard to say there. This deck's incredibly complicated to play against. Previously, it did put Long in a position where Long couldn't copy things with Thespian Stage since the Wasteland was up to just blow up the Thespian Stage in response. But now we have a Plains that has the activated ability, tap 3, Plains becomes a copy of target land of your choice.
Long draws his copy of, believe Sagiri Step. It's interesting, it's the one land in your deck you don't want to draw.
Why not?
Well, you usually want to, I guess you can use it to get past blockers. We saw him use it against Ethan Gajewski twice on Maverick to get past Scrib Ranger both times.
Yeah, Scrib Ranger's a nice magic card.
Here is Dark Depths from Long. He will make the 2020. And this would be the situation, right, if he had a crop rotation where he'd wish that the step was still in his deck.
Right.
But he'll make the 2020, he'll make the Dark Confidant. He's already Thoughtseize and Duressed 2 removal spells, so he's just hoping another one doesn't show up, and one didn't. There's the handshake, a 2-0 for David Long. Merit Lage gets it done.
Yeah, and that's kind of the formula here that we saw that game. We saw a ton of hand disruption. Long, rather than having things like Exploration being super